Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
If I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It's Wednesday. It is Wednesday, February 1st, 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Raymond Jackson, president of the Amalgamated Transit Union, Local 689, Loudoun County, Virginia. Bus drivers and workers on the bus system are on strike. Then, Helena Bottemiller Evich, founder of the publication Food Fix, and what's going on at the FDA and this recent finding that there's lead in a lot of baby food. All this and more. Oh, wait a second. No, that's not it. Also on the program today, Trump pleads the fifth 400 times in a fraud deposition.
I'm smart.
I don't want to have to say it again.
It's because I'm smart.
5th, the 6th, the 7th, whichever one you want, I'll take it.
I'll do them all. College Board strips down its advanced placement African American classes, caving to the assault by Florida's Ron DeSantis. Nikki Haley, first to announce she's going to challenge Donald Trump in the Republican primary. White House maintains no negotiations on the debt ceiling because basically Kevin McCarthy still can't figure out what they're going to ask for. New York Governor Kathy Hochul sides with corporate lobbyists and vetoes the Grieving Families Act. Cops who killed Tyree Nichols have records of excessive force. Surprise, surprise. Bernie Sanders calls on the DNC to ban super PAC money from primaries in the wake of the AIPAC GOP funding scandal. Lula to visit Biden in Washington next week. U.S. charges 4 in the assassination of Haitian President Moise.
Jovenel Moise, right?
Moise?
Yeah? Yeah.
That's what I thought I said. New report.
Said moist, basically.
I didn't say moist.
It's close enough.
Moist. New report. Black taxpayers 3 times as likely to be audited by the IRS. Talk about critical race theory. This is would be one of the first things you would teach, frankly. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We got a lot to get to today. You have to listen to the show using the app for behind-the-scene extras like technical difficulties. Somebody says on the IM. Folks, it is, what's that day?
Hump Day.
That's right. Emma Vigeland coined that phrase almost 2 years ago now. And it is caught on like wildflower.
Wildflower.
Wildflowers.
Like Sam's new phrase, catching on like wildflowers.
I'm trying to mix it up. I am in constant pursuit of my own catchphrase. Every Wednesday, I get reminded about how...
You'll never be me.
I've been doing this for 18 years, and I have never had a catchphrase. And certainly, to the extent that I have, maybe pause it comes close, but that just seems to be something that, like, our fans say. But everywhere I go, people refer to my Wednesday as Hump Day, and you did that almost like on day one.
Yeah, it's the power of positive thinking.
All right.
That's how you did it.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Have you ever read The Secret?
Let's get to this. Right now, Tony Blinken is in Israel, and meeting with Bibi Netanyahu. It remains to be seen what the. I mean, I don't know that there is, frankly, a Biden administration policy on Israel. I mean, of course there is, but it seems to be do nothing. And
Hope it works out.
yeah, and give us a call sometime. Here is Palestinian journalist Saeed Arakat asking a State Department spokesperson what the designation the State Department gives Palestinians living in the West Bank and other settlements as the Israelis are gearing up for another assault, essentially, on Palestinian homes and trying to dispossess more Palestinians. Watch this exchange.
Status of the Palestinian people in the West Bank, including Jenin, including the camp of Jenin, and everywhere else in the West Bank. How do you designate them? What kind of designation you give the Palestinians in the West Bank?
That they reside in those territories.
They reside in that totally independent of the rest of the world, as if it were a different planet. Are they occupied, for instance? Do you subscribe to the fact that they are under military occupation?
Said,
It's a simple question. Are they under occupation?
Said, let me say a couple of things to the point that I believe.
Are they occupied or are they not occupied? What is the status that you give the Palestinians right at this moment? What kind of status do they have?
Said, the recent period has seen a sharp.
I'm not talking about a recent period. I am saying about legally. How do you designate the Palestinians in the West Bank? What is their status?
Said, I understand the question you're asking, and as we've said previously, it is vital for both sides to take action to prevent even greater loss, and we condemn any violence, escalation, or provocation. We have made quite clear, and I spoke to this in addressing Matt's question, that we believe Palestinians and Israelis equally deserve to live safely and securely.
Now, who guarantees that equality? Who will guarantee that Palestinians and Israelis can actually have the same equal measures, as you keep repeating? It's not the Palestinians that keep going day after day into Israeli villages and towns and so on and attack them during night raids, killing their people. You just basically recited the Israeli story that there are 9 militants killed and 1 civilian, as if you were sure of that fact, even before an investigation went on. Where should the Palestinians go for protection? I've asked this question many times in this room. How should the Palestinians be protected?
Said, we have been very clear, and we believe that there is an urgent need for all parties to de-escalate and to work together to improve the security situation in the West Bank.
Right, but
And just sort of stating over and over again that you've been very clear does not make it so.
Well,
Although they have been clear to a degree, we know who they side with.
I'll tell you what I am not clear about is why there is a refusal, and I don't know if this is a backtrack, but it feels like it is. There is no dispute, at least internationally, at least in terms of the UN. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know what other entity you use as an arbiter, but there is no dispute that these are occupied territories. They are occupied territories. And I don't even know what that's the point. Like, I don't know what the contrary theory is. And the idea that the United States would not have an official designation for people living under occupation, this just seems to me to be absurd. And they won't do it because they're, I guess, afraid of offending the sensibilities of the Israelis, or it's because the Israelis are, maybe there's some push to annex that territory or whatnot. But the bottom line is they are occupied civilians. That's it.
I mean, I think if that latter point that you make, that if there's a push to annex that area, which it's like, I mean, they're essentially doing it slowly by removing Palestinians from their homes and seizing them, the fact that the United States is choosing not to recognize that as an annexation and as an occupation first would be catastrophic. That's what this journalist is pleading for them to do, to just take a stand and reiterate the facts on the ground as they are. But he's very carefully reading off a paper, probably trying not to mess up any talks with Blinken and Netanyahu and this new far-right government, but this is the exact time that the United States has to stand against it.
I also think that the problem is that it is hard to square the U.S. Involvement in Ukraine with their lack of involvement with the occupation of Palestinians. Because because the obvious parallel is that Ukrainians living in areas with Russian occupation are living in occupied are living with occupation. I mean,
occupation becomes salient.
That's the problem, is that they now have like some type of benchmark as to what they do in one instance with one category of people, and they are afraid to have the Palestinians in the West Bank be recognized as being in that same category. Because then all of a sudden they have to account for why in this instance they do that, in that instance they do this. And that's what they're trying to avoid. But it's also
so far past that point, though. People are really starting to understand what this actually is, that this is apartheid and occupation. I mean, they're the last to know, or they're the last to know, but they're being purposefully.
It's a rearguard action.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. We've got a word from our sponsor, and then we'll be talking to Raymond Jackson. He's the president of the Amalgamated Transit Union, representing about, I know we'll ask him, but approximately 140 bus workers, bus repairers were on strike in Loudoun County, striking against a private entity that it does not seem to have a terribly good record in the way that they treat their workers, based upon how many strikes we've seen across the country against this one particular private entity that's, I guess, running public transportation, which in and of itself is a problem in my mind. But we'll get to that in just a moment. Sponsor today, well, this is an easy one for me. I use it every single day. Here it is right now. Today, of course, still, I'm stuck on the Tangerine Immunity Liquid IV. It is the category-winning hydration brand. Liquid IV is not necessarily the Tangerine, but that's it is in my household. But Liquid IV is the category-winning hydration brand. It is helps with your hydration, your well-being. The hydration multiplier they have is the one product you're missing in your daily routine. In just one stick, you get 5 essential vitamins: B3, B5, B6, B12, and vitamin C. And you are hydrating 2 times faster than water alone. Because of its minerals and vitamins, just the uptake into your bloodstream is greater. Use Liquid IV first thing in the morning before a workout, or when you feel run down, or after a long night out. I use it on long flights and also daily during the show. Liquid IV, you get 3 times the electrolytes of traditional sports drinks. It's non-GMO. It's free from gluten. It's free from dairy. It's free from soy. Plus, Liquid IV is on a mission to change the world. Company has donated over 25 million servings in 50-plus countries around the world. Like I say, my favorite right now, Tangerine. In the past, I've gone heavy into the matcha sort of energy booster.
Mm-hmm.
I recently got the apple.
I saw that over there, apple pie.
No, not apple pie. This is a different one. This is like the sour apple.
Ah.
That one of my favorite actual apples. I think it's the Envy. Is it the Envy? No. What's the name of that? I can't even remember off the top of my head. But nevertheless, they have great flavors: lemon, lime, pina colada, tropical punch, watermelon, which is big around these parts, particularly in the summer. Acai.
Mm-hmm.
Berry, which I know is your favorite.
Yes.
Grab your Liquid IV in bulk nationwide at Costco, or you can get 20% off when you go to liquidiv.com. Use the promo code MajorityRep at checkout. That's 20% off anything you order when you shop Better Hydration today using the promo code MajorityRep at liquidiv.com. Great way to keep yourself hydrated. Helps me during the winter too, actually. Surprising because everything gets so dried out because of the heat. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll be talking to Raymond Jackson, president of the Amalgamated Transit Union, Local 689. We'll be right back after this. We are back. Sam Seder on the Majority Report, here with Emma Vigeland. Joining us now, Raymond Jackson, president of the Amalgamated Transit Union, Local 689 in Loudoun County. Raymond, thanks for joining us. I know you're pressed for time at the moment, but let us know. You guys have been on strike for 3 weeks. We're talking about 130 workers. Give us the background and the context of what's happening with this strike.
So we started negotiating with this company a while ago. Matter of fact, ever since the company came in, it's been a struggle just trying to deal with the company. One of the first things they did when they came in was not recognize the union. Then they made us go through the whole process of voting all over again for recognition, filing the paperwork. We did all of that. We got the recognition. The members said, yes, they want Local 689 to represent them. Once they got in, one of the first things they also did, after making promises not only to the union and to the county about the workers, their wages and benefits, 6 weeks later, they cut them. They cut the workers' wages and the workers' benefits. Now, here's what's funny about that. And I ask the question all the time. Whether you want to believe it or not, we're still operating in a pandemic. Since March of 2020, bus operators, train operators, station managers, because I pretty much represent the majority of the transit workers in this region. And we seem to forget about like the people who clean up the stations, the people who clean up the bus depots and things of that nature, all out in front of the public. We were the ones who made sure that your family members, if they caught COVID and needed a Metro Access van or a bus or a doctor or a nurse or anybody needing food or anything, we were the ones who took you where you needed to go. We didn't complain, and if you ask our members, some of them would even say, I didn't sign up for this, but they stood up. And for you to cut out health benefits in the middle of a pandemic speaks a lot to your character as a company. But that's how we got to where we are. We've been negotiating with the company for over 6 months, and it pretty much was we were negotiating against ourselves. We'll put something on the table, they reject it. And if they did come back with something, and you all know in this country, the inflation rate, for what they wanted to pay these people, these workers couldn't buy a dozen of eggs, and I'll say was most shameful about the whole thing is Loudoun County is supposedly the richest county in this country.
Yep. Yeah, that's my understanding. Is it's one of the like the median income there is if not the highest, one of the highest in the country. My understanding too is that you lost a lot of not necessarily in that specific local, but across your union, you lost a lot of members during COVID. And one of the things my understanding is too is that the one of the big issues here is the amount of shifts that people are having to work. Can you speak to that issue?
So just speaking to like one of our drivers who he tells, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around how he's doing it, but he may be working anywhere from 80 to 100 hours a week. Man, that's 2 jobs. That's 2 full-time jobs.
And so what is it? Well, I mean, what's going on with that? Like, one of the things that we've seen, particularly nurses striking, but we've seen this across the board, it seems to me, with workers who are deemed essential workers during COVID, where there is an attempt by these companies that come in. And again, this is a private company that the county has essentially leased the right to operate these buses. And this company is Keolis. They come in and they attempt to basically limit the number of employees that they have as a way of cutting costs, essentially upping, productivity from these people and basically driving them into the ground.
So companies like Keolis, they come in and they bid on contracts. Virginia has a law that says the most reasonable lowest bid, most reasonable responsible lowest bid. What does that mean? So now they'll come in and they'll bid on these contracts, and now, you at a car auction, you're bidding against each other to buy the car. Well, this work totally different from that. Is who can put the work out at the lowest price.
Right.
And at some point, that price should have became unreasonable to the people sitting at the table, because just being able to put the work out. And what you wind up doing is what they're basically saying, and this is to all the workers in this country, when you're dealing with private contractors, the only place they can get the savings is off the back of the workers. So I'm going to bid as low as I can and then make my money back by working the workers harder, which is unsafe, making them work for 50, 60, 70 hours a week, which is actually driving their productivity and their life standards down, although you're getting a little overtime, but in order for you to make what would be a reasonable living, you have to work 60, 70, 80 hours a week just to get what should be a normal paycheck for 1 week. So they'll come in, and I've been doing this for years. They cut corners, they cut safety, anywhere that they can cut to get a profit, that's what these companies do.
My understanding too is that there was a strike in Reno, Nevada, against the same company over the same type of issues.
Yes.
That the another local in Prince William County, Virginia, has now voted overwhelmingly to go on strike if necessary. Again, this is another Keolis run, I guess, county, if you will.
Yes.
And the other thing I understand too is that Loudoun County is supposed to, the deal they have with Keolis is if Keolis cannot operate these bus lines, they need to pay a fine essentially to the county because they're not delivering on what they claim they can deliver. And part of what they claim they can deliver is workers at this rate. And these, this is the way you defined reasonable price, right? Is can you deliver what you say you can deliver without essentially destroying your workers? And if you can't, they got to pay. But the county's letting them off the hook for those fines. And it seems like basically they're putting their thumbs on this labor dispute.
So I'll say this, as far as the county goes, and you're 100% correct. We had a conversation just last night about this. I'm trying to find the correct or politically correct way to say what I heard was a bunch of mumbo jumbo. It didn't make sense. I had my attorney sitting beside me. And yes, the county can and should be fining Keolis for not putting out this service. I mean, I can't tell you why people do what they're doing or don't do what they should be doing. I can say this, and you speak about the nurses and everything else that's going on across this country with essential workers, because when it came time, we stepped up. Essential workers across the board stepped up, from the grocery store workers to the pharmacy workers to even the person who cleaning the rooms at the hospital after someone died of COVID. Somebody had to go in there and clean up. You know, these are the people who we don't see. We see the firefighters, we see the police officers, you know, and now we see the doctors and the nurses. But what about the rest of us, like the transit workers? And now you have nurses across the country going on strike because we're fed up and we're tired. We are no longer willing to just put up with the treatment of somebody. I mean, I just saw a statistic that said America has more billionaires now since the beginning of this pandemic, than they ever had. So what you're seeing is businesses are getting richer, and they're getting richer on the back of the working class people like myself and you all. And all we're saying is, we're not trying to stop you from becoming rich. It's a democracy. That's what we do here in America. But we just want our fair share. You're no longer going to get it off of the workers' backs in this country anymore. And this is the message we're sending to Keolis. And then ask yourself this question. Just in this region alone, every Keolis property that they have, which is the one in Prince William that you mentioned, the one in Loudoun County, and you spoke about the one in Reno. It got to be a problem with the company. It can't be a problem with these different unions. Right. You know, it got to be a problem with this company and the way that they do business. And the way that they do business is about their profit margins.
I mean, it's also, frankly, an indictment of the idea of privatizing these things, because you could either pay the workers who are actually doing the work, or you could have to slice off some for shareholders and for C-suite people and board of directors, so they can all get their cut, and they're actually lending very little to the process here. And you know, our audience is big fans of public transport. We want to thank you for the work you've been doing. What can folks do if they live in Loudoun County to support you guys? What can they do if they live outside of Loudoun County?
I mean, across the region, we're out on strike. We need help. You know, we to be honest, if you can come out and just come out and get these people on this line encouragement. One thing that they do when you go out on strike is you lose your health benefits. So we're starting a fundraising page for these workers, so that, I mean, the union can only do so much, you know, and we need other people in the region to step up. Some of the things you can do is call the politicians out in Loudoun County and ask them to make their contractor come back to the table and do what the contractor is supposed to do, and that's bargain in good faith. We've, you know, man, I can speak all day about this. We've done any and everything we can, and like I say, we've pretty much been bargaining against ourselves at the table. So anybody that's listening or can hear us, I'm asking you all, reach out to the politicians in Loudoun County, had them hold their contractor 2 feet to the fire. And if you can come out, you know, donate some food, anything you can. The workers are out there every day, 3 o'clock in the morning to 3:30 in the afternoon. Rain, sleet, snow, hail, they're out there and they're marching. And I'm so proud of them.
Do you have a strike fund or any kind of link where people can go to? We can put it in the description. So I will send it to you all. We're actually putting it together now. We had some ATU members from New Jersey and New York come out Monday, and they donated. So we're actually putting that fund together now. To be honest, we didn't think that we would be out this long. January in the cold.
we thought that this company would show some type of humanity. I don't know why we thought that, but we thought that they would. And it's funny that even some of the basic things that we're asking for, they give to the workers in France.
Yeah, this is a French company. That occurred to me too as I was reading into this. We know, I mean, look, the bottom line is these companies are going to get away with what they can get away with. And if they can get away with something different here than they get away with in France, they're going to do it. And unless, without you guys, being able to fight this, they'll get away with what they can get away with. And so hopefully folks out there will bring you some more support, and we wish you the best of luck. I know you got you're pressed for time, so we'll let you go. But Raymond Jackson, maybe you can come back and give us an update in a while and see how you're doing.
I would love to, Sam, and let me, if I can, and I explained to you all before we came online. Also represent the WMATA workers. We had a member this morning who was shot. I need to get over there to the location so that I can find out what's going on with them. But I would plead to anyone, again, within the sound of my voice, reach out to your local politicians. The crime in this region is starting to be uncontrollable. You have workers who can't even come to work without being shot. That's a problem.
All right, Raymond, we really appreciate your time today. And you'll send us those links. We'll put them, we will post them.
I'll make sure you get them. And Sam, thanks for having me.
All right, thank you, Raymond.
All right.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be talking to Helena Bottemiller Evich. She's the founder of the publication Food Fix. She's going to talk to us about the what's going on at the FDA and the recently announced plan to limit the amount of lead and other heavy metals in baby food. I know that is an infringement upon a lot of people's freedom, but hopefully we can do something about that. We'll be right back after this. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigland on the Majority Report. I want to welcome to the program Helena Bottemiller Evich, founder of the publication Food Fix and a contributor to Politico. Helena, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Let's start with, there was we're just, I guess, a day or two away from, we just saw a sizable reorganization at the FDA. What? Tell us about that. I'm curious as to how long has that need been building? What was the reorganization about?
Yeah, a lot of people, I think a lot of consumers and eaters have not really been fully aware of sort of the problems facing the FDA when it comes to their regulation and oversight of food. But really over the past year, we've seen a lot of scrutiny over the FDA's handling of food safety, of nutrition, the infant formula shortage crisis, reports of illnesses and deaths among infants really brought this into the national media. And so the FDA has been under a lot of pressure to have better leadership, to have a better structure in place. We didn't know who was in charge of food, that there was a decentralized leadership structure there, which created power struggles and slowness in decision making. And so the reorganization FDA announced yesterday is really aiming to try to put someone clearly in charge of food at the agency and try to centralize some of the decision making. It's gotten mixed reviews. A lot of people don't think it went quite far enough, but it is a big change.
Two questions. One being, when you say in charge of food, like what else are they in charge of? Or I guess, drugs, I imagine it would be the other. But how long is this, how long has this problem been going on in terms of like, was there a structural change, prior to this one that decentralized things? Like what is the predicate to the need for this?
Yeah, all great questions. I think FDA has been dysfunctional on the food side for a long time, for decades. But we did see the leadership structure change during the Trump administration. They eliminated a deputy commissioner position that helped sort of centralize decision-making at FDA. So it's been a few years that we have not had a deputy commissioner. However, I think the problems are a lot deeper than just the organizational chart. There's cultural problems at FDA. There's a fear of taking on the food industry. There's a lot of bureaucracy to contend with. And so we see, really key safety and health issues take years, sometimes decades, to get out of that agency. And I think there's a broad recognition now that slowness on things like food safety, reducing sodium in the food supply, setting heavy metal limits for baby food. These are issues that consumers expect FDA to be handling. And so there's a lot of pressure on them to really do better. And I think that's what FDA is trying to do here. It's been a longstanding problem, but it's definitely gotten worse in recent years. And I think that's why you're seeing more attention to it right now.
When was the heyday of the FDA? Was there a heyday of the FDA? Because I believe, and and I come with my priors, that during a Republican administration, generically speaking, but I would imagine particularly one who announced very early on their agenda is to deconstruct the administrative state. That's a quote from Steve Bannon when he was still an advisor to Donald Trump, or an official advisor. That they do that when they come in. That's their agenda in the administrative state. The FDA would be one of those Food and Drug Administration. When was the heyday, and how much of this sort of these problems, and I do get the sense that there's been long time problems with the FDA and shortcomings, but we can go in one direction or the other in terms of attempting to fix those. When was the heyday, and how much of a setback was it during those 4 years?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. When was the heyday? I think, if you look back over a century of food regulation, we have come a long way in terms of getting fraudulent products off the market and creating, basic standards. But we still see a lot of foodborne illnesses. We still see diet-related diseases be the number one, one of the leading causes of healthcare costs. So there's still really major problems that need to be addressed. I think it's a little bit simplistic to just look at what happened during the Trump administration and see that as too much of the real source of the issue here. And I say that because actually during the Trump administration, the FDA was quite active on things like tobacco and food safety and nutrition in a way that I think people really didn't expect them to be. One of the weird unknown things on my beat is the FDA actually kept almost all of the Obama nutrition agenda at FDA. And it's sort of this thing that surprises people, right? You wouldn't have expected that, considering the advice from the top was to deconstruct the administrative state, as you said. So FDA has been a little bit, I think, more sheltered from that. But there are just some really big challenges here. And I think consumers have this idea of what FDA does on food, and it just doesn't match up with what they're actually able to do or willing to do in terms of regulation and oversight. And to go back to your earlier question, FDA is also regulating drugs, medical devices, cosmetics. They actually regulate about a fifth of consumer spending. So they have a really big job. And food has historically just been a lower priority issue. I mean, they are focused on vaccines and drug approvals and all of these other parts of their job. And food has been just a lower priority for quite some time.
Is how much of this is also a funding issue?
There are definitely funding issues here. The other side of the agency is largely funded on user fees, which means that, drug companies pay a lot of money to help fund the FDA and essentially assure that they will not have drug approvals that drag on for years and years and years, right? So they are investing in sort of certainty in a sane regulatory process. That's the deal that they've sort of made over time. On the food side, we don't have that. It's all appropriations, which means Congress has to cough up all of the money, and the food side has lagged in terms of staffing. Staffing's been pretty flat over the past few decades as their job has grown. And so that's certainly an issue here that a lot of people recognize on top of the cultural issues, the leadership issues, the bureaucracy, and sort of all of the other challenges facing that agency. And really anyone seriously looking at this will tell you that sort of all of those need to be addressed if we expect this agency to really be able to do its job.
All right, one more question on that notion, because I'm fascinated about how, I feel like we in the public don't have a clear-eyed notion of the relationship between agencies and the administration and how that works. So how is it that why in your estimation was the FDA that engaged in those areas that you would have anticipated they wouldn't be? I mean, how does that happen? Is it personnel? Is it culture? Like what shields them? Is it just that the Trump administration was like, we got bigger fish to fry, and so we don't have the energy to really hurt the FDA in the way that we'd want to, and it's already so, maybe there's already, it's not an agency that's on the top of our list like EPA was in terms of allowing, our buddies to be able to do whatever they want.
I think it's a little bit of all of those things. I mean, I don't think that former President Trump came in with like a clear vision for what he wanted to do on food and drug policy. So that sort of helps FDA, right? There isn't a clear agenda there. Part of it was also personnel and personality. You had FDA Commissioner Scott Gottlieb in that position for a part of that tenure, and Gottlieb had a strong record of taking on tobacco and, even sometimes the drug industry, and was pushing forward still on nutrition. So if you just look at the record, it's sort of, I think it's one of those things that surprises people. But also FDA, as you mentioned, was not in the spotlight like EPA and like some other parts of the government that were much more controversial and really getting a lot more press coverage. So it was kind of all of those things. FDA is also supposed to be somewhat more independent. So, we're not supposed to be seeing the president like weighing in on, drug approvals or things like that. Certainly politics are not kept out of the FDA, but that is the goal, is to try to keep it somewhat more insulated just because of the sensitivity of these, decisions, and obviously life and death scenarios in a lot of cases.
How much of this is the fact that there's a bit of a symbiotic relationship with, we'll read pieces from the Revolving Door Project all the time and cite their reporting. I'd imagine that there's a lot of revolving door stuff happening, especially on the drug side with the FDA, that might, preclude either party, any kind of administration, for the most part, from weighing in on it and touching it. It's almost an organism onto itself. I'm not saying that right, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I do think that's part of it. I mean, I think the hard thing about FDA is, consumers expect it to be really strong and to sort of look out for public interest. But there is also the mechanism that the industry needs, which is predictable approvals, right? A predictable timeline for these things. And so there is a symbiotic relationship there. And, the agency doesn't always get it right. I don't think they would be I think they'd be the first to acknowledge that. I don't cover the drug side as much. There is much more of an issue with the revolving door on the drug side than there is on the food side. You tend to see officials sticking around longer on the food side, and it's just a fundamentally different relationship that the industry has with that. Also on the food side, we don't really have the approval dynamic. There's a lot of additives on the market that don't have to go through any sort of approval. And so the food industry doesn't really need FDA in the way that the drug industry does. And it's just a really different relationship. And it's actually this whole year of scrutiny on the FDA. I mean, I did a big story at Politico, if people are interested, called The FDA's Food Failure, that really maps out a lot of this. There's been so much scrutiny that now the Washington Post editorial board is actually calling to just pull food out of the FDA, like just separate it out. It's just different, it needs its own agency. And I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon, but I am seeing a lot more momentum and sort of legitimacy building around that concept. I don't know when we would see it, but there is a lot of people starting to think that maybe that's a better way to do it.
It does feel like a totally different dynamic because somehow like the price sensitivity that the public has to food seems to be different than it is to pharmaceuticals. And so there's and we don't know what drug that we're not getting access to. But if for some reason there was, people aren't getting pork or eggs or, cheese or, cabbage or something, we hear about that much quicker, I would imagine. So the dynamics are very different. Let's move to this latest announcement by the FDA that the government is going to take away my freedom to have heavy metals in baby food. And again, meddling in this relationship that I have. It's just one more example, like light bulbs, where I'm not going to be able to get lead in my baby food. Can you walk us through that?
Yeah, FDA has.
I should say I'm being a little facetious. I hope you can pick up on that.
Those were really good puns. Yeah. FDA has been under pressure for several years from consumer groups to set standards for heavy metals like lead and cadmium, arsenic, other toxic elements in baby food. So we have not had standards for baby food. We have had some limits for rice. Arsenic is a particular issue in rice, which is a problem when you're doing rice cereal for infants. And so other than rice, we really hadn't had standards, and the FDA just set forward voluntary but serious. The industry is expected to comply with these lead standards for different types of baby food. Consumer groups are really happy that they finally did this, although not everyone thinks that the standards are protective enough. They want to see them become stricter over time. So one of the problems with lead and other heavy metals is that they're environmental pollutants. So, lead, we're paying for this burning of lead gasoline we did a long time ago, adding that to soil, adding that to the environment. And we're seeing it in, root vegetables, things that take up a lot of elements from the soil. So it is not something that you can totally eliminate right now, even if you wanted to make your own baby food or do anything. A lot of healthy foods contain small amounts of heavy metals. And in some cases, these snack foods are actually containing pretty concerning amounts of heavy metals. So there is a push now to try to set limits across all different types of baby food so that the industry is really focused on dialing these levels down closer to zero is FDA's plan. But again, going back to FDA dysfunction, the agency really had to be publicly shamed and publicly pressured into setting these standards. So it is not something they just woke up and were like, yeah, we should do this. Like, we looked at the data. They were publicly shamed by Congress, by consumer groups and others on the outside.
I'd like to see labels that give a lead, like this is a high lead baby food, and see how well their product does. But we should, getting to this point, because, I guess I got awareness through this during when the, and I don't think it was the FDA that did these tests on rice. I think it was a not-for-profit advocacy group, if I remember correctly, but I'm not 100% sure on that. And they found that actually brown rice tended to be planted in areas that would, and more susceptible to more uptake of arsenic. And correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is you grow this stuff in areas where they have used arsenic, for instance, as a pesticide, and it has a very long half-life to the extent that it has any. It just lives in the soil. It gets uptake by certain vegetables, like root vegetables, like you say. Like I know, like sunflowers do this quite a bit, actually, and rice absorb this stuff into them. So when the FDA says, all right, here are the standards that we want to set, and we're drawing attention to your products more, and it's voluntary, but it's going to mean that there's more awareness of the lead in your, given product, or, based upon what you're using. Does the company then have to make a decision? Okay, we can no longer grow the rice that we're using in this baby food, for instance. I'm just using this as an example because I don't know the specifics, but we can't grow it in either this area of the U.S., but it's probably more than likely like we can't get it from China anymore, or we can't get it from this other country where they had no regulations whatsoever as to what they could use for pesticides or insecticides or whatever, and their soil is just tainted, and we need to find a different place. That's going to cost us money. Is that basically the dynamic that we're looking at?
Yeah, it is that dynamic, but it is really forcing the industry to think, are there things we could be doing? Could we be sourcing sweet potatoes from a field one over that just had lower heavy metals in the soil? Are there things that growers could be doing to reduce this? This is a question for the Agricultural Research Service over at USDA. This is something that is solvable with many people focusing on it. You can't eliminate all, exposure to heavy metals because of the environmental pollution, and some of them are naturally occurring, but you could reduce it a lot with some focus, with some real attention to sourcing and what kind of conditions these products are grown in. And so that's really what setting standards does, is it makes the industry go, ooh, if our product's tested and we're not meeting this FDA limit, like we could really be in hot water. And it really forces testing where maybe there was none or very little. Some companies do a lot of testing voluntarily, but there's no real requirement to do that.
And so, I mean, regulations make the products better. I mean, that's basically it.
I think we could all agree that paying attention to neurotoxins in baby food is worth doing, right? I mean, these are.
I'm not sure that we can, who the we is in that, because
all three of us can.
I mean, look,
yeah.
I've never heard a conservative say lead in baby food's not an issue. They may not be talking about it, but I think if you take this to most consumers, to most people across the political spectrum, I think there is agreement that lead, which has been proven to reduce IQs and increase behavioral problems and all sorts of neurodevelopment issues, I do think this is one of those issues where you would find really broad agreement. I will go out on a limb on that one. Yeah.
You may be right about that. I guess I'm just like, they seem to be okay though with burning of, let's say, a gas in an apartment where there's evidence that will. I mean,
or setting up an FDA that, or government structures where regulations so lax that these kinds of things might happen. I mean, in terms of priority, the average voter is going to say no lead in baby food. I understand that, but in practice, the Republicans, they want to dismantle the administrative state.
I mean, in some cases, the industry actually wants standards, right? Because they want safe harbor too, right? They want to be like, okay, well, if we can get below this level, are we good? Are we safe? Are we not going to get sued? Are we meeting, without any standards at all? It's kind of disorienting in the market.
Well, it's also a race to the bottom, because if there's no standards, then you, all of your incentive structure is to provide the baby food with the most amount of lead, more or less, because it's going to be the cheapest place to grow. It's the least expensive in terms of what you're not going to have to exert any resources to inhibit that in your product. And it just creates a race to the bottom. I
think it disincentivizes the investment in testing, because testing is expensive. So if you're spending all this money testing and your competitors aren't, that's also not a level playing field. And so I think there is kind of a level playing field, sort of conservative free market argument that could be made here where setting clear rules is probably helpful for the industry.
Right. I mean, but of course, setting rules is not a free market concept that they would accept. But putting that aside, are there other things that you see out there that have yet to reach the level of the concern in terms of, or the response that we've seen in terms of lead? In other words, I imagine for some time there has been an awareness within your circles that lead and heavy metals in baby food has been a problem, and at one point it reaches the level where the FDA has to. What is the other things that you see on the horizon in terms of issues like that?
Yeah, I interviewed FDA Commissioner Robert Califf this week about the FDA reorganization that they're doing, and he brought up chemical safety and chemical issues as an important thing on the food side. And I think he raises a salient point, which is that we're seeing a lot more press coverage and research studies on things like PFAS or PFAS, the forever chemicals that are common in like non-stick applications. Those do not break down, and there's a lot of environmental contamination. There's concerns about these being found in various food products. And also, I think microplastics, you're seeing more coverage of this, like little bits of plastic that are getting into food and particularly water. They recently are finding this in like placentas and breast milk. And, we don't know the health effects of this. We don't have evidence that it is something that like we need to be, imminently concerned about. But I think people hear that and they're like, we should probably be looking at that.
Right.
So I think you will see more conversation around that, and I wouldn't be surprised in the next several years if FDA isn't looking at these issues more.
That's interesting. My understanding, having interviewed a lot about PFAS in the course of some like tort cases, that we could all take a sample of blood and there'd be some at least trace amounts of PFAS in all of us, because, like you say, this stuff doesn't degrade. It just travels through our environment. Helena Bottemiller Evich, thank you so much for your time today. We'll put a link to Food Fix and some of your work. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, folks. Going to head into the fun half of the program, wherein we will take your phone calls and your IMs, and we will have fun. Just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only help this show survive and thrive, you get the free half free of commercials, you get the fun half. We will put links when we get it from Raymond Jackson, how you can help those Amalgamated Transit Union workers. If you are so inclined, again, it helps when you're on the picket line and somebody comes by and honks in support of you. I mean,
it's always nice to hear that from the folks themselves, though, because you worry am I going to be welcome?
Am I imposing?
Yeah. But showing up with, especially with like pizzas and stuff like that, that's awesome. Worth the time.
People appreciate it.
Also, I just want to underline another labor representative saying, take COVID seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Just I don't know about that. That's just
boy. Somebody's got bee in their bonnet.
I'm really. I did a whole thing we did an hour and 40-minute post game last night on Left Reckoning.
I feel like your Twitter activity. You've been on like a 3 to 4 day kind of sprint with this.
Yeah, I want the smoke. Some people don't want the smoke.
Yeah, I hear it.
There you go. All right, loving it. This is like a new Matt.
I need a vacation.
But you're getting one, right?
You're getting one.
Matt's last day.
That's right. Matt's headed off to sunnier climes. We'll see if he comes back.
Disappear into the jungle.
JustCoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority. Get 10% off. And folks, pass around the show. There's a lot of people out there who I think, because YouTube has become such a dominant player in the way that people trade media around, there's a lot of people out there who don't even realize we do the first half of the program. It's true. It's like it's
Tim
starting
Pool
to
for
occur to
one.
me.
Yeah, right.
Tim Pool for one, but I'm not so concerned about him. But there's a lot of people who should be hearing from the labor folk that we have on the program, hearing about the agencies. We try and do over the course of a week. Right now, we're in a zone where we're trying to do over the course of the week a range of different types of interviews that, some of you like all of them, but others might be more inclined to hear more about history at certain points and how that implicates our current politics. Other people might be more interested in the labor stuff that we cover, or the agency stuff that it's a little bit more sort of material and immediate. So send stuff to your friends, particularly, whether it's the YouTube first half of the program or the Twitch. You clip our Twitch, you can actually clip it pretty easily, or the podcast. So helps the show. And give us a review on any of those platforms. Well, here we go. Kirby 4242. I'm a water researcher at the University of British Columbia, and to give some hope about PFAS, we're making pretty big strides in dealing with it on an environmental level and medical level. Thanks to massive media coverage, unions were able to get PFAS out of firefighter coats, and fast food companies got pressured into using different materials in their packing. Media hype matters for science. Great. Emma.
Yes.
What's happening with ESVN?
Well, I mean,
the GOAT! The GOAT!
Yikes. We'll talk about that tomorrow.
Who's he talking about?
Brady retired today again.
Oh, she knew who I was talking about.
Yeah.
Brady retired?
Yeah.
I mean, asterisk. Like, we'll see.
Yeah, I think it's for real this time. Good thing he blew up his marriage for this. But I don't know why. I just can't stop hating him. But we talk about Brady hate and more on youtube.com/ESVN show.
A lot of coaching news to get to tomorrow.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And Sean Payton bombshell. So we're not doing the show today, even though there was a lot of breaking news late afternoon. Today, we'll do it tomorrow. Touch on Sean Payton, touch on D'Amico Ryans going to the Texans. Why that's an interesting situation. He got a 6-year deal, so hopefully that gives him some security because that ownership group sucks. And more, youtube.com/ESVN show.
And on the Matt Leck Media.
Yeah, like I said last night, talked about Jimmy Dore for a while in the post game. Patreon.com/Left Reckoning. In the first half, we talked to Matt Huber about climate change and class politics. And David, you never guess what the last state to have a COVID emergency active is.
Texas.
Maybe Emma would guess. I mean, never is probably too long.
Who is that used?
You might have told me about
Who
it.
is that used against is really the question, right?
Yeah, well,
I mean, people can guess.
All that disease coming across the border.
Yep.
And so we talk about that. Patreon.com/Left Reckoning to get access to that.
646-257-3920 is the number. See you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it to my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ Denner.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Denner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs that look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males.
Psych. Fuck them. Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100.
Can't knock the hustle.
Come on, fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy. I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland, the crew. Fun half of the Majority Report.
Oh, God.
Serious Business on the IM says, saying you have no catchphrases is silly. Why don't you take a second bite at the apple? Find another arrow in your quiver. Admit that you have some catchphrases, lest we in the Discord judge you in absentia. Maybe you don't care. Maybe this is just a zero-sum game to you.
You know, this is, of course, the reality is that he does have many catchphrases. They just haven't caught on.
They haven't caught on. That's my point. That's my point.
He's had many bites at the apple with his catchphrases.
People suggested and ah, and I think that's caught on pretty well.
And ah has caught on. You see it more and more. People are doing it.
More and more people every day.
But they don't. Nobody does it like the 5 times in a row that I'll do it.
Yeah.
Right.
It really is.
They bail after 2.
Yeah, they are poor imitations, honestly.
That's the thing, is that this, in many respects, Serious Business proving my point. All of those attempts at catchphrases to catch on, none have caught on. None. Emma comes up with one, like practically day 1 on this program.
Basically
I don't know
global.
if it was technically day 1. It was probably day 2 since you started on a Monday.
Yeah.
And then you just come up with hump day and everybody's talking about it.
Right.
Really, really aggravating.
I understand.
But
it's hard to not be me.
And that's all we're really here for, is to see our own sort of selves reflected back at us in society. So, yeah, congratulations,
Exactly.
Emma.
That was a little too deep for me.
Actual Sam Seder, it's hump day. Where did I hear that? You have to listen to the app for the behind the scenes extras. I don't know what that means. Fruity Dinosaur just wanted to pass on what a person campaigning. Oh, maybe on the app it comes up quicker. Is that what it is? Maybe like we start broadcasting on the app before we do on. Is that possible? On YouTube? I don't
it
think
would
so.
have just been the audio from the and that sort of stuff.
Fruity Dinosaur just wanted to pass on that person campaigning for the Wisconsin Supreme Court is actively saying in interviews that she believes Act 10, removal of public bargaining, was unconstitutional. Her name is Janet Prostowicz. I can't pronounce it. I wouldn't even begin to know how to pronounce what you've written there.
Prostasiowicz?
Okay, that could be it. Some grumbling about she's violating ethics codes by doing this, but the conservative judges didn't recuse themselves when there was the case about their campaign donors, so who cares? Let her cook. There is, I believe that Wisconsin Supreme Court election is in April. Hugely important. Hugely important. Anything that happens in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, and then in this like descending order, like Arizona, New Hampshire, North Carolina, Georgia, I'd put up there. Things that happen in those states that seemingly are local are not only hugely important to the locality of that state, but also nationally speaking. Both in terms of our legislature and in terms of the executive branch. Keep that in mind, folks, because we're going to hit that Wisconsin Supreme Court election starting early March. Worcester Ice Cats. Also crazy to see U.S. prioritize Israel being included into the visa waiver program. Tomov Link. Happy Friends Day Wednesday, folks. Here in Britain, teachers are on strike today. There have been rallies up and down Britain, including a huge rally in London. Also, it's a little early, but later this month will be my 1-year anniversary of becoming a Majority Report member. Thank you for keeping me informed and entertained. Keep up the good work. On a similar note, I think the 6-month anniversary of ESVN being announced is coming up soon, too. If I'm not mistaken, congratulations, Emma and Bradley. Is that true? I think so. Wow.
Sure, yeah.
Meg from Portland. Donald Trump released a video today saying he'd ban gender-affirming care in all 50 states if elected. Shall we go with that? We have that, right? That's number 3, right? Or 4? Yeah, here's Donald Trump now. And again, there's going to be a different dynamic in this 2024 primary versus the 2016 primary on the Republican side. And that is everyone in the Republican Party has realized, and it's not like they hadn't been training their voters to vote for Donald Trump or someone like this. They have been. Both the elected Republican leaders and the conservative media machine. Donald Trump was a product of right-wing talk radio. I mean, still very much a product of right-wing talk radio. But now, that's broadened out technologically, different platforms. The big difference that we're going to see in this upcoming primary is there is going to be a full-throated, I expect, a full-throated challenger to that lane of Trump's, which is, the sort of full-on attacks on immigrants, full-on attacks on marginalized people, more racism, more now that transphobia is popular on the right. We're going to see more of that. Nikki Haley's just jumped in. She's not going to take that. She's not going to be going on that lane, which is why she's just running for vice president. But DeSantis might be, and Trump knows this. So Trump is trying to get out ahead of DeSantis on some of these other issues because there's going to be this big sort of internal argument. DeSantis is copying Trump. Trump is copying DeSantis. Here's Donald Trump staking his claim on transphobia in this upcoming primary election. And remember, even though it was a loser for them in the general election, hugely popular in the primary election for Republicans to be transphobic.
The left-wing gender insanity being pushed on our children is an act of child abuse. Very simple. Here's my plan to stop the chemical, physical, and emotional mutilation of our youth. On day one, I will revoke Joe Biden's cruel policies on so-called gender-affirming care. Ridiculous. A process that includes giving kids puberty blockers, mutating their physical appearance, and ultimately performing surgery on minor children. Can you believe this? I will sign a new executive order instructing every federal agency to cease all programs that promote the concept of sex and gender transition at any age. I will then ask Congress to permanently stop federal taxpayer dollars from being used to promote or pay for these procedures and pass a law prohibiting child sexual mutilation in all 50 states. It'll go very quickly. I will declare that any hospital or healthcare provider that participates in the chemical or physical mutilation of minor youth will no longer meet federal health and safety standards for Medicaid and Medicare, and will be terminated from the program immediately. Furthermore, I will support the creation of a private right of action for victims to sue doctors who have unforgivably performed these procedures on minor children. The Department of Justice will investigate Big Pharma and the big hospital networks to determine whether they have deliberately covered up horrific long-term side effects of sex transitions in order to get rich at the expense of vulnerable patients, in this case, very vulnerable. We will also investigate whether Big Pharma or others have illegally marketed hormones and puberty blockers, which are in no way licensed or approved for this use. My Department of Education will inform states and school districts that if any teacher or school official suggests to a child that they could be trapped in the wrong body, they will be faced with severe consequences, including potential civil rights violations for sex discrimination and the elimination of federal funding. As part of our new credentialing body for teachers, we will promote positive education about the nuclear family, the roles of mothers and fathers, and celebrating rather than erasing the things that make men and women different and unique.
I mean, there you have it. He's trying to hit all of the sort of like DeSantis project in Florida in terms of the schools. He's trying to hit all of the transphobe talking points across the board. And, you know, Emma got into it with somebody on Twitter, a guy who's a member of a PAC.
Oh, yeah.
That specifically funds candidates based upon their, you know.
I'll read that quote. But this is one of the, I don't know if it's a PAC, but there are a variety of different conservative organizations that have been cropping up and have been sponsoring nearly identical legislation now in the hundreds in these state houses and state senates. And this guy admits it.
What's the name of that group? It is, I believe it is actually just a PAC.
The American Principles Project. A man whose name is Mr. Schilling. I just have the screenshot of the article here. I forget his first name.
Terry Schilling.
Terry Schilling said, confirmed that his organization's long-term goal was to eliminate transition care. The initial focus on children, he said, was a matter of, quote, going where the consensus is. So the whole hand-wringing about the children save the children, is really just a wedge for them to open up the door fully so that they can begin to in mass discriminate against trans people.
And we need to define
adults.
what transition care means. Like there's a they combine both, like they say like, oh, 5-year-olds are getting genital mutilated, which is not happening. And then but they're also against social transition, which is just like at school, your child might go by she or they or a different pronoun. And that's like where you hear about the stuff like, oh, teachers have to report that to parents, which is like, you know, you ran this, we had the same exact thing during like with gay rights. Like if your kid is LGBT in high school, does the teacher have a responsibility to report that to the bigot parents, frankly? And like, I don't think they should. I think that kids should have their own right to privacy there.
You're right. They are a supposed think tank.
Either way, they're printing out legislation that's being copy and pasted mostly. I mean, Utah just passed an anti-trans bill, but the ones in South Carolina and Oklahoma want to ban transition care up to the age of 26.
Right. I mean, the bottom line for this is really to just attack trans people and dehumanize them in many respects. And they know the most palatable way of doing this is by trying to make it about kids, as if kids have been sort of ushered into this and having this imposed upon them, as opposed to what the real dynamic is kids probably like ranging from like begging their parents and their doctors for help on this.
Yeah.
And them having to go through an extended, very often years-long process to get any type of non-emotional gender-affirming care.
And none of what he said the Biden administration is doing is what the Biden administration's doing. They've like issued memos essentially saying that you need to respect the dignity of trans people, of trans kids, but for the most part, they have not acted. And I think what he was referring to is that he had some letter, essentially, the DOJ sent out to attorneys general across the country saying respect protections for trans kids under anti-discrimination laws. But there's been nothing. What he's trying to do is take what's happening in Texas, where Vice did a full breakdown where they followed 3 families with trans kids and how they're trying to leave the state because they're so terrified. He's trying to take this national so that there's nowhere for people to go.
Right. And he also mentioned the stuff about teachers. And we know that like at least in 2 counties in Florida, local school officials have told teachers and schools, hide your books because we're not sure. This legislation is written in such a way that we don't know what crosses the line, and the implications of us, being found to have crossed the line are so great that we got to pull all the books. So, the Republican presidential primary is heating up. Here's Lindsey Graham on Sean Hannity's program. You're going to see this combo quite a bit because, Hannity had access to Trump in a way that he probably doesn't have access to DeSantis. And Graham had access to Trump in a way that he doesn't have access to DeSantis. Now, Graham probably doesn't care that much because I don't know that Graham got anything from that access other than convinced his voters not to primary him. But who knows? But these two are going to get together and promote Donald Trump. It's going to be fun to watch this internecine battle. But here's Lindsey Graham on with Sean Hannity.
So you're with the president this weekend. He kicks off his campaign, gets your endorsement, gets the governor of South Carolina's endorsement. And what you said this weekend was, how many times have we heard we like Trump policies, but we want somebody new? And then you said there are no Trump policies without Donald Trump. It's interesting you asked that question because 2 potential contenders in this nominating process would be Nikki Haley and former Secretary of State Pompeo, people we both like. And I asked both of them the same question. What policy differences do you have with President Trump? Neither one of them really had an answer on any policy differences at all. It seems like the Trump agenda is the agenda for the entire Republican Party. So how will other candidates distinguish themselves against Donald Trump if they agree with his policies?
I really don't know, but I do know this. We're lucky as a party to have Mike Pompeo, who was a terrific Secretary of State, Nikki Haley, a strong voice in the UN for American First Agenda, my buddy and love Tim Scott, right? We got Mike Pence, maybe the most decent guy to ever serve in the government, all talking about running for president. Here's why I'm with Trump. I know the downside of Trump, but let me tell you about the upside of Trump. There are no Trump policies without Donald Trump. You know why NATO gave $431 billion in defense spending increases? Because they thought that Trump really meant it when he said he was going to pull out. You know why we moved the embassy of the United States to Jerusalem? Every president before Trump said, I will do it. But then all the smart people said it will create World War III. Trump said I would do it. I would do it. He is responsible for securing the border through his personal will. When he put tariffs on Chinese products, it scared the crap out of Mexico, and they said, yes, we'll be glad to give you 28,000 troops. We'll be glad to keep people in Mexico, because they thought Trump would put tariffs on Mexican policies. There are no Trump policies without the man, Donald Trump. And to all these people who are very talented, I don't think you could do what he did, and I want him to have another shot. Unfinished business.
There it is, ladies and gentlemen. What a lovely turnaround. Play that.
Let's pull this up from 7 years ago at this point. So the end of 2015.
Yes.
Kind of in a similar time frame that we're in right now with, well, actually, no, it's earlier.
Back when Lindsey still had a cell phone that wasn't getting blown up by Donald Trump announcing his phone number.
hearing what Donald Trump says.
And disgusted. Well, I want to talk to the Trump supporters for a minute. I don't know who you are, and I don't know why you like this guy. I think what you like about him, he appears to be strong when the rest of us are weak. He's a very successful businessman, and he's going to make everything great. He's going to take all the problems of the world and put them in a box and make your life better. That's what he's selling. Here's what you're buying. He's a race-baiting, xenophobic, religious bigot. He doesn't represent my party. He doesn't represent the values that the men and women who wear the uniform are fighting for. I've been in the Air Force for 33 years. I retired this June. He's the ISIL Man of the Year, by the way. Just got back from Iraq a week ago this Monday.
I know, we interviewed you live from...
Okay, we don't need to hear any more of that.
That clip stands out in my mind every time he's talking about Trump.
You know what may have changed? He found out that Donald Trump, in fact, wasn't so bigoted, didn't have a problem with any of those people. That's what it was.
I surprised you, didn't I?
Yes, turns out I'm super woke. Super woke.
People can change.
And so that's why Lindsay has come around.
It's like a rom-com situation. Start off as enemies, become friends
Yep.
in the end.
That's right.
But Lindsay he's without a, he needs a guy to back up in the media like John McCain. So that's his role. I mean, he was very aggressive with Herschel Walker too. He loves being the cheerleader. So now he gets to be Trump's.
There he goes. Let's open up the phone lines. 646-257-3920 is the number. Majority Report wardrobe coordinator. What's a state like California from telling the College Board they won't accept these revisions that DeSantis has demanded? You can get money from California or money from Florida. Pick one. I don't know that there's anything to stop them. I don't know. Apparently, though, there's like about 10 other states that they anticipate are going to follow Florida. That's the problem. So it's not just Florida versus California. It could be California versus like Florida plus 12 other states. $1 trillion coin. Hey, MR crew. Recently started to go through some ketamine sessions prescribed by a psychiatrist. My anxiety and depression. Pretty groundbreaking stuff. I know a lot of people who are doing this now. A lot of people. All in all, the sessions are pretty relaxing, minus the fact that I had to listen to Sam Harris for 15 minutes. It's part of a guided prompt. That must be difficult. Just imagine that slow monotone voice as it starts to vibrate through your brain as the drugs kick in. Scary shit. Oh, I wanted to mention this. I don't want to get, I don't want to get too specific because I don't want to, but we got a really nice note from some listeners where our program was very helpful during a birthing process. And a child, a very cute child, was brought into this world listening to the sounds of this program.
Wow.
And so first off, I want to apologize to that child for being, when they look back and they have their session where they go through the trauma of being born, they'll realize that part of it was because they were listening.
They'll see they're not interested in toys, just torts.
There you go. Exactly. But it was a very nice email, or message we got. I didn't want to go too deep into it, but.
That is very cool.
Yep. Demian, non-GMO. Aren't GMOs good? At least Trump made a distinction between sex and gender. Shrugs. Bradley Fan Club, respectfully, Sam, we in the Discord chat are taking severe psychic damage at the idea that you aren't a catchphrases guy. Dr. Bludgeoning. Does the MR membership mean I can use Hump Day without paying a licensing fee, or do I owe Emma some royalties?
You owe me money, yes.
Train Boy, please thank this guest for his service. Transit workers better than troops, indeed. TJ from Utah, I'm a member of the ATU Local 382. This is the same union as Raymond Jackson heads their Local 689. We are at the end of a contract negotiation right now, and the tentative agreement with the UTA is pitiful. Sadly, we gave up our right to strike when the local was first established and most of our bargaining power with it. A lot of younger, more radical members I know want to get that for us. Any advice to get in contact with national representation to help with that? Solidarity forever. Good luck with your strike. I guess that was a question for Raymond Jackson. Not sure, but I would recommend reaching out to other locals that have had strikes and seeing what they say. Star Fox, Sam and crew, can we please get a birthday shofar for Ren in the Discord? She turned the big 2-0 yesterday. She's an inspiring young woman, much loved member on the server. The kids, they say, as they say, are all right. Happy birthday, Ren. Right or wrong, one solution to bad cops. The neighborhoods patrolled by a precinct get to vote every year or so to keep or fire their local precinct's captain or commander. With their job tied to community relationship, the person in charge would want a good, respectful cops under his command. In many rural counties, sheriff is an elected position. Why not do the same in cities with precinct commanders? I just don't know the value of having your local precinct captain run elections, because then they start to raise money, and I don't know. I don't know about that. We have other ideas that I think the problems associated that could be pretty extensive. Dank Uger. Much like you don't want healthcare workers to have to work too many shifts, having drivers operating buses working 80 to 100 hours a week sounds like a very bad idea. 508 Club, F. Keolis. They run the commuter rail in Mass, too, and on top of privatizing being bad for workers, it's also terrible for the public who uses it. It's slow, capped at 30 miles per hour in the summer, which means a 40-minute driving time takes 2.5 hours on the train. Costs a commuter around $400 a month to get to work and back on a regular basis. WTF. As much as possible, can you clip funny, interesting, minimally political parts from their shows? I have people want to infect their algorithm by sending clips, but it's got to be more subtle or they won't watch. We're working on stuff like that. There may be like some shorts that YouTube is introducing, and we may be working on that. Go to the phones. Calling from a 514 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name's Jonah. Nice meeting you guys.
Nice meeting you, Jonah. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from France, but I'm originally from Montreal.
Calling from France, originally from Montreal.
Jonah.
What's on your mind?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm a new member, and I've been listening to you guys for years, and I really appreciate it. It's really great. But I also was mainly calling in because I actually went to Steven Crowder's high school, and I just thought it was really funny, the stories that we've been hearing about him. So,
please tell.
Is that yes? So
now let me just say, just because you're from Montreal doesn't mean that we can confirm that you actually went to the high school. But well,
if you want the details, I can email it to you. I know when he graduated and everything.
Okay, all right. Well, I mean, let's tell those stories, but everybody should take this with a grain of salt.
Yes.
But
yes, absolutely.
An increasingly small grain. But go ahead.
Yeah. So the thing is that my girlfriend, he's a bit older than me. I'm 23, but her cousin actually went. I spoke with him because although we went to the same high school, he was a bit older than me, and so he went to elementary and high school with him, and he was telling me about how even as a little kid, he was like imagine 12 or 13 in grade 7. He was constantly talking about how the U.S. is so much better than Canada, and how that our healthcare system sucked. But it was really weird because even at 12 or 13, he's like, "Dude, you're 12. What do you know about the healthcare system of Canada versus the U.S.?" And so that to me sounds like from a very young age, his dad had a lot of political influence, influence over his politics. And I just thought that was really weird.
I mean, it happens. It happens, but usually, you sort of try and outgrow those things and come up with your own ideas. But his dad manages them, at least last I heard. So,
yeah, and that kind of feeds into the reason why he was so mad with Ben Shapiro's Daily Wire's offer as well, because he basically offered to buy up the production staff, but that basically means there's no more money for Daddy left. Don't you think?
I think he was sort of manufacturing some of that outrage, to be honest with you. I think he wanted more money. They didn't offer it to him. He thought he would get it somewhere else. He didn't. Then plan B was, I want to launch my own thing. How do I do that? I'll pick a fight with the Daily Wire. Again, it's one of those situations where I think like this is a good fight for them to have, and it should continue as long as possible. And I would like to see both sides lose in that fight. But I think it was just it was a promotional thing. It was like a pro wrestling thing.
Yeah. Okay. Before I go, I just wanted to, if it's okay, I've actually been working on an app that helps progressives or people who want to run for office. It helps them get up and going and like takes care of the process of like collecting donations and creating like a web page for them, so that even people who are not technically savvy can actually go and create a page, and all the tools and mechanisms are there so that they can spread their name and their campaign out there. And it even takes care of the tax reporting as well.
Interesting.
And yeah, even though I live in Canada, it is actually, it's called Good Change, and they're in Arkansas. It's actually some progressives in Arkansas trying to fight the Republicans, and they're doing their best. And I was just wondering if I could plug the website, if that's okay.
Sure, of course.
Okay, yeah, well, it's www.goodchange.app.
Goodchange.app. Sounds good.
Yeah, exactly.
No pun intended. Appreciate the call.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Have a good one.
You too. Back to the phones. Calling from a 612 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam. This is Chris from the Twin Cities.
Chris from the Twin Cities. What's on your mind?
Well, I just the clip about Trump and his his announcement about the trans stuff really has me worried. I've got a son who's 15, and he's at school right now, obviously, but I can't imagine what he's going to say when he hears this, because trans kids already deal with enough stuff, as it is, and having the idea that Trump and the amount of press that everything Trump says gets to these kids, like my son doesn't know jack about Bernie Sanders, even though I talk about him all the time.
Right.
But he knows a ton about Trump because of the coverage. And for him, the idea that he's not going to, if Trump becomes president, he's going to take away any of the tools that he gets right now that he's looking forward to, because his mom and I have said that nothing physical will happen. We're not going to back anything until he's older. But if he all of a sudden hears that that's taken away from him, I worry about his mental health and the children across, all the kids across the country. Like what the damage that can do. I don't know that this is going to get. I don't know this is going to get the emphasis from the news sources. You guys obviously are, but the places that that really get out there. The MSNBCs and the CNNs and those guys. And I just really, it worries me that there could be a huge, if Trump was to become elected again, or even if he becomes the candidate, the Republican candidate, the number of kids that could be pushed over the edge is terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, I think I hadn't even really contemplated that. I mean, I would say one thing, just in your specific case, in terms of your son, that at age 15 right now, Donald Trump, whatever he institutes, probably will not apply to them, because by the time they turn 18, Trump wouldn't have had time to implement these things. But the larger point remains, which is there is a first order damage to this, which is if he gets into office and can implement these things, horrible for trans kids across the country. There's a second order damage in that it becomes a larger talking point and could be adopted by people running against him. And it just creates an even more hostile environment for trans kids. And then the third order is just how it impacts the individual kids who may not be, 15, 16 years old and have this genuine prospect of, and even those kids, I imagine, are going to be felt by the general hostility. But as an individual, the idea that they could lose whatever type of care they're getting that is helping them at this point, whether they have determined that they want to transition or they want to keep the door open to transitioning or what, that, there's going to be material implications just by the idea that the former president who's running again is opening his campaign. This is his ride down the escalator, essentially, and coming out with his opening shot. And it's horrible. In the case of your child, at the very least, you'll be able to say, you're not going to have that third order thing to worry about, which is that or first order, I should say, that you're not going to be subject to any changes that he makes for minors. But nevertheless, all of it is real and has a direct detrimental impact on people.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And one last thing I wanted to see, just really quick, if I could. The guy called 2 Fridays ago, I think, about, he was kind of reprimanding you about your advice to the guy, your quotation marks advice about Tesla.
Right.
Two things about that. One thing was he missed the point completely that what you made again afterwards is that he agreed that the long term of Tesla is, not a good investment. And that's what you were telling this guy is, talk to your investment people, because, I'm not giving you advice, but talk to your investment people. This may not be the place to have your retirement funds. So you were absolutely correct on that. And the second thing I want to say about that is that, I mean, this is a line I'm drawing that I don't know if you guys would maybe, expand on if you agree or not agree, whatever, I guess. But guys like that, the guy who called in to reprimand you, these, investment bros, I see them as kind of connected to the stuff that what was her name that Mattei was saying. Is there is a fascism that's connected to the austerity that's connected to these people who think that they can become self controlled by being day traders, and really what happens is they end up pushing this idea that you can become that the stock market is anywhere near a real investment project. I don't know. I mean, I guess I just think my own ramblings on that, I guess, but it just seems that there's a connection between these guys, like who will reprimand you about something investment wise, but really not realize they have no real skill at this at all.
I mean, the Andrew Tate thing is like, here's how to be a man: secure passive income.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Well,
right.
Appreciate the call. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
I mean, in the main, I don't think anybody should reprimand me for anything at any time. But yes, it's hard to circle the square, as it were, between maybe not necessarily a good long-term investment and something I'm putting my retirement in. Now, I guess if you're 64 and you're, you think it's going to be a short-term bump, I mean. But I wouldn't put. Listen,
you can take money out of casinos.
I wouldn't put 100% of my holdings on anything into one thing. Of course not.
Yeah, I mean,
particularly that.
Diversify.
Theoretically, I would diversify.
Right.
Put it all on my favorite capitalist.
What should we do next here? We got the Peterson or the.
The Peterson's pretty good.
All right, here is Jordan Peterson. He is in Jerusalem with the Daily Wire.
Oh.
Just expanding. Gosh,
After one of the deadliest months ever in terms of like Israeli forces murdering Palestinians, Daily Wire's there to celebrate. Guess.
And here is this is of October last year. It's
just thought it would be relevant from our discussion.
Oh, it's just coming out now.
Okay, never mind.
This is a little bit old. Should we do this or no?
It literally just got recirculated.
Well, let's hold off on that.
Sorry.
We'll save it for the next time. He does something.
Here is Ben Shapiro, since we're on the Daily Wire beat. Here's Ben Shapiro trying to explain, I guess, I'm curious as to who he thinks he's speaking to in terms of explaining how to deal with the cops. But here's Ben Shapiro explaining, based upon his extensive experience of being rolled up on by the cops because he's walking around as a teenager or he's walking around as a young adult, explaining how you're supposed to be acting.
I'm confused as to why you believe that if basic traffic stops are not done, suddenly the crime rate will go down. It is worthwhile noting, by the way, Memphis has one of the highest violent crime rates in America. Memphis's Scorpion unit was founded by the current police chief who just disbanded it because of the problem of violent crime in Memphis. In fact, according to Neighborhood Scout, you have a 1 in 12 chance if you live in Memphis of being the victim of either a violent or a property crime. That's how bad crime is in the city of Memphis. And so the solution from this Ivy League professor at Brooklyn Law School, it's Ivory Tower person, is that what if the police just don't police anymore? Great solution, guys. It'll work out amazing.
My really strong sentiment is that to decrease violence between law enforcement officials and the public is to decrease the contact and intervention that police have with the public.
Fewer traffic stops.
Exactly. They don't need to be, police do not need to administer stops in basic traffic violations. I know all of us, I can confidently say, have engaged in a minor traffic violation.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and virtually all of us have gotten a traffic ticket at some point. And you know what all of us don't do? Run away from the police officers or fail to obey commands. And not to quote early Chris Rock, but you should obey commands from the police. This is a good idea. This is, if you want to avoid a bad interaction with a cop, the best way to avoid a bad interaction with a cop is not to, number one, commit a crime, and number two, not to disobey the police officer when he tells you what to do. Now, again, that does not excuse police brutality. It does not mean these officers shouldn't go to jail. They violated the law. We talked about this yesterday. But if you want to actually reduce the number of interactions between one population group and the cops, one of the things you're going to need to do is reduce the crime rate among this population group so that they don't have the interactions with the cops.
Oh, my God. Pause it for a second. Hold on. I mean, first off, it's hard to know what is more horrifically disgusting in this situation. In terms of what he's saying. But in terms of like his vast experience, and you listen to what the cops do, in about 30 seconds, you could Google, and maybe you should just do that, about the story about what the tape shows.
Yeah.
In terms of Tyree Nichols, in terms of like the commands that he was being given by the 5 different cops, none of which he could comply with because he was either already complying with those commands.
Show us your hands as they're holding his hands. Get to the ground as he's on the ground.
Yes. I mean, one of two situations were existing. And there was like, literally, I think they documented something like 24, 30 commands that were impossible.
Dozens. Yes.
Impossible to follow. So his experience, Ben Shapiro's, of listening to the cops apparently is maybe slightly different from people who have been subjected to far more scrutiny from the cops. We also know that his whole concept of community, of law breaking, attracting more police attention, largely speaking, depending on what era it's been, it's because the police have decided, and society in many respects, white society has decided that we're going to pay more attention to the potential or the actual law breaking of one cohort of the population versus another. Everyone not everyone apparently knows the implications of like the stop and frisk policies that we had in this. Everybody knows that, in a place like Ferguson, traffic violations are used as a funding mechanism for the the city or the municipality or the town or wherever it is.
And how about drug crimes? Just because this statistic stands out in my mind, that Black and white Americans, it's a little outdated. I think it's from like 2016. They use drugs at similar rates, but Black Americans are nearly 3 times more likely to be arrested or charged, or maybe not charged, but at least targeted for arrest for using drugs. So like that just disproves his entire thesis there.
I mean, and this isn't a case. I mean, this isn't a case of someone who was doing anything of what he's talking about.
Yeah.
But, I mean, this is full-on dog whistle stuff.
Certain groups of people, he keeps saying.
Group and the cops, one of the things you're going to need to do is reduce the crime rate among this population group so that they don't have the interactions with the cops. And this is not exactly rocket science. And yet the solution, apparently, is that we stop the policing, which, of course, results in precisely the opposite of what you seek to achieve. You get fewer interactions with the cops, that's for sure. You do get many more interactions with criminals. This is why you have genius Mehdi Hasan on MSNBC claiming that it's time to abolish the police. Why is it so radical, says Mehdi Hasan, to abolish the police from his security-protected studio over at MSNBC?
Stop it. Security and cops aren't the same thing. I saw these people make it, even like the Capitol Hill police, in my opinion, are not the same as the cop, like NYPD, that's sitting on the corner waiting to like bust somebody. And like the thing is like we do have like our per capita murder rate is about 3 times higher than the OECD. We do have a lot of violence in this country. But I would ask like Shapiro, like what do you think is causing the violence amongst certain communities? Because we have like all sorts of debates over like my entire lifetime. Charles Murray would basically say like, that's inherent biologically, and we're not going to be able to do anything about that. Whereas other people that are more in line with reality and the history of this country is that those groups and certain populations experience more crimes because they don't have a relationship with the police that is conducive to creating order. So like cops, like in many communities, first of all, they don't like solve murders. Like we have a horrible murder clearance rate across this country. What I think like the defund thing, what is purposely missed is people want people like detectives solving crimes in any community. They don't want people like some schmuck with a power trip sitting on the corner policing small things like fare evasion or like the broken window style policing that led America to become the #1 cager of human beings in the entire world. Like not per capita, in terms of raw numbers, we have more human beings in cages because of the approach that is like we just can't. We act like we've been defunding the police the whole time. No, we've been doing exactly what Shapiro wants.
But the security example and the Capitol Police example, like I saw people were giving AOC crap on Twitter because she voted to increase police funding for the Capitol Police. Those are different entities, and they're actually models of what should be happening with policing is protection and like hopefully not overreach. What defund people, what activists are saying is that Black communities are being over-policed and they're being violently assaulted because of that over-policing.
And there's absolutely no reason to have a person with a gun and the ability to arrest somebody, approach the car because they have run a stop sign or run a red light or failed to make a left turn signal. There's absolutely no reason to do it. And in every other sort of aspect of society, they see government encroachment as some type of authoritarian move. The idea that the IRS would audit or fine somebody for not paying their taxes is jackboot stormtroopers coming in. But the idea that you'd have basically a militarized personnel approach your car because you just took a left turn where you weren't supposed to, of course, it's going to make people jumpy and whatnot. And if society was aware, criminals and non-criminals alike was aware that the person coming up to issue a ticket did not have the power to arrest them or search their car for other things, there would be far less violent interactions, period, end of story. And you would get far less violent interactions. That person coming to the car is just there to give you a ticket. Mm-hmm. In the same way that, like, we don't need to arm parking ticket, meter maids, because those aren't confrontations that are going to go beyond the fact that there is a ticket being issued.
And say you pull someone over and they have some sort of like outstanding warrant for a violent crime, that ticketing officer can refer that person to the police, right? It's just not.
I don't even think you need to do that function.
I agree.
You don't need to have that function. If people have an outstanding warrant for a violent crime, then the police will have more time to find that person because they're not out, harassing people who are not engaged in a crime.
They just have this kind of 24 style conception of what policing is. And I'm just saying, even in those narrow instances, it's not necessary.
The having police serve that function is having them serve the function of control, period, end of story. That is it. You do not have them come out and use every interaction that they have with the public as a mechanism in which to surveil them, and a mechanism in which to assess them, unless it is about control.
And
not just in that moment, but also the implication that could happen is also about control. It's the same way, when DeSantis has these laws that causes school systems to hide all their books because they don't know what happens in that moment. That is what our policing system does. It creates a constant sense of anxiety and fear against a population that knows that they should have some anxiety and fear when the police show up at their car, regardless of what whether they have done anything or not. Like, Ben Shapiro has no ability to even accept or be aware that the dynamic between him and a cop is different because of his skin color.
No, but he knows that. He wants there to be some sort of level of control for the cops to act as an occupying force in black communities.
There's a freak out, I think, going on right now with the loss of, you see Barry Weiss's Thomas Chatterton William, the Chateau friend, saying, "Oh, you smell pot everywhere." I feel, and then you also see people we need to really crack down on fare evasion because cops lost, Kennedy, what's his name? Kennedy III said that, it used to be when you smelled marijuana in a car, you could search that car.
Right.
And when it became decriminalized, you couldn't do that. Cops hate that because that's what they want to do is
they want a predicate.
pry into your
they
shit.
want a predicate in which to go in and surveil and control. And the fewer of those predicates they have, the less justification they have for that interaction. And the inverse is true. That's from the perspective of cops. But if cops are frustrated by that, it's a good indication of that's what we should be doing to minimize these things. There is no evidence whatsoever that type of invasive policing reduces crime. This just doesn't exist. Far more evidence that getting lead out of the environment and making for healthier human beings reduces crime.
Reducing baseline desperation probably helps too.
Yeah. Community investment.
Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 513 area code.
Yes, is this me?
Yep.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep. Who's this? Where you calling from?
So I just wanted to speak. So I know we talk a lot about working poor and things like that. And I am a working poor person by almost any measure. Wait tables. Sorry, I'm a little nervous.
It's okay.
I wait tables for a living, and I support a family of 4 off of that. I have a disabled wife. And I just kind of wanted to speak to some of the experience that I've had, kind of navigating the bureaucracy and dealing with being a restaurant worker during this time.
Sure.
So, when it comes to COVID, I'm not trying to scare anybody, but I can almost guarantee any restaurant that you ever go to has at least one person working with COVID.
Yeah.
And this is a result of not having sick days, not having paid time off, not having anything like that. We really don't test necessarily, just because tests are, $25. And a lot of times people are afraid of what that test result might be,
Right.
So
because then you have to take time off and you lose wages and you lose tips.
I've seen this in plenty of context. People I'd rather not know.
Yeah.
And it's not even just lose wages. A lot of times it's punitive measures by management, where if you have to take time off, your hours might be cut in half the next week, you know? So, like, when people talk about, like, the number of COVID, like, cases, that is so severely underreported and undercounted.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot walking around with COVID that don't want to acknowledge it, you know? I've had, we had to send the owner of our restaurant, we had to essentially force him to go home one day when he had COVID. And he got very angry, but like 5 of us were like, either you go home or we're going home. So he eventually acquiesced. So there's this like top-down approach to just act like COVID doesn't exist and just get through the shift.
Yeah, I mean, on some level, that the dynamic that you just went through in your restaurant is exactly what we saw play out across society, except for more often. But in the end, the workers lost. That's basically what happened.
Exactly. We are sacrificial lambs, you know. And I have, like I said, my wife's disabled. We take care of her 80-year-old grandma. So I have 2 high-risk people in my household, you know. So a lot of this, like, no COVID mitigation, anti-vax shit, like, this isn't a joke for me. You know what I mean? Like, this stuff puts my family in direct danger every day. And now we test a lot because we ordered tests, and I always make the sacrifice to make sure that we have tests in the house, just because if I go home with COVID, I want to make sure I catch it as quickly as possible so that they can get, you know, the stuff that they need.
And those tests are now like the government's not offering any more free tests, or to the extent that they are at all, it's gonna they're gonna stop in May. There's going to be millions of people losing the extended Medicaid as a function of the end of the COVID emergency. Vaccines are going to be no longer provided for. And unless your wife's grandmother will still get that support through Medicare, but it's a problem. It's a real problem.
Yeah, it massively is. And I also wanted to speak to kind of, so we get Medicaid, right? That's like a very important thing to my life because of my wife's disability. And I wanted to speak through kind of like the way that the means testing doesn't just eliminate people from being able to get, can't navigate the bureaucracy to be able to get help, but it stifles wages, right? So before COVID, I worked at a Golden Corral for 12 years, and I never received a raise in that 12 years. And the reason I didn't receive a raise wasn't that my boss wouldn't give me one. It's that I couldn't accept one because I had found an equilibrium that I could barely scrape by and pay my bills.
And still be eligible for, what state was this in?
In Ohio.
And did they expand Medicaid under the ACA?
Yes.
And so at that point, you were able to get a raise.
Not really, no, because these income levels, they're all like cliffs, right? So when you go to apply for welfare or for medical coverage or for anything like that, like I had a friend who lost out on $400-something in food stamps a month because she made $3 more than she was allowed to make during that time. So it puts you in this precarious position of, if I get this, 50 cents an hour raise, will that be too much?
Right.
And you can't get a clear answer from anybody. You can't get a clear answer from a caseworker. They don't want to tell you, no, you can't make more money, right? So you just have to risk it. And you get into this position where, and I've known tons of people in this position where they take lower paying jobs in order to qualify for these benefits because, I don't know, say you're working at McDonald's for $11 an hour and you might be able to go to Burger King and make $14 an hour. But if you're on Section 8, if you get food stamps, if you get medical help, if you get any of these things, the money isn't going to replace the benefits that you're getting.
Right.
So it has this dynamic of just stifling down wages to where people can't make more, because what they're going to make in the immediate future, even if it's like long term, it might be a better opportunity for them.
It's going to put them in a really it's going to put them in a really precarious position.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's a problem. I mean, I think like to the extent that there's any way of like mitigating that, you don't make it a cliff, you make it an off ramp.
Exactly.
But that, that becomes also sort of like an administrative, it creates more work administratively. I mean, this is why ultimately we should have a universal system where it is not means tested whatsoever. And we do our means testing on the taxation side. Instead of you having to qualify for Medicaid, everybody gets essentially Medicaid or Medicare, whatever you want to call it. And if you make more money, your taxes are commensurate with that. And that's it. And that's the way that we do this. But we don't do that because, like you say, there's an unspoken incentive to diminish wages, to diminish the power of workers, to lock them in certain jobs, and essentially to sort of chip away at these people and to maintain like a semi-permanent underclass.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. It is designed for you to not better yourself. It is designed for you to shut up and work the job that you can work and barely get by. And if you try to better yourself, well, we're probably going to punish you for that.
Yeah. It's a problem. I mean, that we need to decommodify some very basic necessities that human beings have.
Yes. Exactly.
All right,
I do, I try my best, in my daily life. I live in Ohio, so it's a very red area, to try to explain that for people with Medicare for All. I got into with the owner of my restaurant, I got into a big discussion with him about how Medicare for All would be like one of the best things that could happen for a small business like his.
Definitely.
Because you wouldn't be with companies that get that are able to provide health insurance, that get lower premium plans because they have more employees, things like that, and you're not competing in a labor force with healthcare as an incentive.
Exactly.
Now you're just competing with people for wages and job environment.
Exactly.
What'd he say?
That he didn't believe me. It was bullshit, and his taxes would go up too much.
Okay.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. You can't get through to that.
Good luck with that. I appreciate the call. What was your name?
Tony.
Tony, thanks for the call, man.
Hey, thank you. You guys, left is best. Thanks for all you guys do.
Thanks, Tony.
Take care.
Appreciate the call.
This just reminds me of something I talked about last night in Left Reckoning, but the Reese family in Williston had a bad last year. So on January 23rd, if you want to put this up, Bradley, on January 23rd, I was hospitalized with a collapsed lung due to COVID. I spent 17 days in ICU and 5 more in a recovery room just as our family was returning to a sense of normality. Maricel had a miscarriage at 4 months. I was on November 11th, it was on November 11th that the baby Willie was diagnosed with ALL type of leukemia.
Oh, jeez.
So he was out of work, lost his insurance because of the collapsed lung due to COVID. Then they get their baby with leukemia. The mom worked for the school district, and Maricel worked for the Williston Basin School District, and we had good insurance via Blue Cross Blue Shield. Sadly for us, 2 weeks later, because they had to go to Utah to seek treatment. 2 weeks later, via conference call with HR, the school principal, Maricel, was let go. She was given the choice to quit and be eligible for rehire at a later date or be terminated. Unfortunately, this was legal because North Dakota is a right-to-work state. And in our current state of mind, we didn't know what to do, and Maricel had never been fired from a job before, so she quit. It was at this time that her employer canceled our insurance. So caught in this is one of those stories that KX News in North Dakota described as like a dilemma, but this is just a trap that Americans put people in by making health care something that employer can withdraw or give you as they see fit. And I don't know, it's just really frustrating.
So if you can contribute to the GoFundMe, we'll put that link in the show.
All right, let's go to the phones. Calling from a 646 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? 646.
Sam?
Yep. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, man, it's John Benjamin from Colin. How are you?
Hey, John. What's up?
How you doing?
Good. I'm doing my show right now, incidentally.
No, I know. I just figured I would call just because, I want to address this. I talked to Tim last night, and
Tim?
I just wanted to go to. No, Tim Pool.
Okay.
Regarding the stuff he was talking about regarding Bob's Burgers, and I'm obviously Bob on Bob's Burgers, so when I talk to Tim about it, I usually don't want to get in the middle of shit like this. And I certainly don't want to deal with this publicly. I probably could have called you earlier. I just figured I would.
Wait.
I have free time now, and then I'm back obviously to recording Bob's Burgers because that's what I do all the time.
Wait. What are you?
I understand. Well, let me finish. This is kind of what Tim was talking about. How you filibuster and cut people off. But when you talk to Tim about the problems you were having with Bob's Burgers, of course Tim was going to talk to me about it.
Wait, what? What are you talking about? There's a what?
About how you were upset about your diminished role in the show, and how Tim had pointed that out, rightfully so, because he was just, telling it like it is, like he does.
There's video? Well, hold on.
That's how,
I have no idea. I have no idea.
I assume you saw it.
I did not see it. Hold on. There's what? Then play it, Bradley. Hold on for 1 second. I want to see this.
Okay.
I
all right.
Honestly, no idea what you're talking
about. Okay.
Okay. What? Biden.
They did a bait and switch with that other guy with the eyebrow action. What's his name?
And so this is why, I have no problem with mentioning him. You want us to talk about it? Listen, the dude, his whole shtick is trying to get attention. He's sadly desperate. He did a voice on Bob's Burgers, and they started cutting his character out, and he was losing it. He does you ever see Bob's Burgers?
Yeah.
Sam Seder is the voice of the health inspector. And I remember I was talking to him once, and he was like, "Yeah, but they're like weaseling me out of the show, man." He's getting bummed about it. So what does he do? No, I mean, I'd be bummed too. I mean, I feel for him.
Wow, caught red-handed, Sam.
I don't really remember.
I assume you would. Yeah. I assume you had heard that.
No, I didn't. I didn't hear that. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I don't remember ever saying to Tim Pool in any type of conversation that we've ever had, which has mostly been recorded, but just hey man, I'm losing my mind. That doesn't sound like me so much.
Well, I mean, that does sound like a little bit of what you were going through, and Timbo was talking to me last night about it. Look, I guess he was saying in good faith. I guess he sort of asked me to sort of bridge this. Like I said, I want to de-escalate because that's what Timbo wants to do, and he doesn't want this.
Hold on. There's more. There's another clip. All right, play that one. What the?
This guy's obsessed with you.
My point. Look, dude.
Who?
I've done a debate with Sam Seder. He didn't know what solipsism was. He didn't know what deontological moral philosophy was. He didn't know what utilitarianism meant.
He's an actor first. I agree with that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean,
when I was talking to Tim, obviously you're a consequentialist, right?
I mean, no. I mean, I guess I'm more of a utilitarian. I guess arguably a consequentialist.
I would say so. I mean, have you read Brand at all?
Russell?
No, CD?
No, I haven't read CD. I've read Russell Brand.
You've read Russell Brand? Why?
Because it's
the bookie books were okay.
In praise of idleness, I was into that. But what does that got to do with anything, John?
I mean, have you read? I mean, that is this has to do with everything of why you do have a diminished role in body. Have you read Nagel?
Well, that was the whole point with Lauren.
What about Scanlon? Have you read Scanlon or Scruton? Any of these people?
I haven't read Scanlon or Scruton.
Sir Edmund Burke? Have you read, sir? You took government in college, didn't you?
A little bit of Burke, but what has this got to do with Bob's?
Have you read C.S. Lewis? Have you read The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe?
What has this got to do with Bob's Burgers?
Have you read Immanuel Kant? I mean,
yes, I have.
Categorical imperative.
Yeah.
You have. So you know Pflicht. You know Pflicht.
I don't know Pflicht.
You're aware of Pflicht.
Well, but John, what has this got to do with Bob's Burgers is my question.
Do you practice self-love?
What?
In a Kantian sense. Do you practice self-love?
Hey, philosophical self-love.
Look, John.
Yes, do you masturbate to Kant? Do you do that?
Occasionally Hume, okay?
Okay, well, this is the point that Tim is getting at, and this is why it's true. We have a problem. The show has a problem with you. Have you seen Infinity Wars?
The Infinity Wars?
Have you even seen Age of Ultron? Have you seen any of the Marvels? Have you seen Iron Man?
Of course I've seen that.
This is what Tim is talking about, dude.
I just don't follow what that's got to do with what you're even...
Have you seen Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.?
I have not...
The TV series.
No, I haven't.
See, this is like none of this stuff. You don't have any of the reference, the frame of references that we do, that Tim and I do, that the show does.
Wait, how does Bob's Burgers do anything about the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or any of this?
You got to, what you need to do is just address these issues first. Get on the internet, look up some of this stuff, read some of this stuff, get on board. And then, I'll go back to Tim, and I'll tell him that we talked. But until you do these things, I feel like this is not going to work out for you. It's not going to get you. It's not going to get you more voice work.
So wait. Your argument is that if I can make a good case, a Hegelian case, as to why Kant's whole sort of moral ethics is too self-contradictory, then I'm going to get more Hugo on Bob's Burgers.
I mean, if you do those things, I can definitely talk to people at the show.
Well, I don't even understand why you care.
Yeah. You gotta look. You gotta look deeper, man.
Look inward. See, that's the whole problem, is that you don't understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Deontology, but look into it. Call me back, and then we can figure this shit out. I'll go back to Tim and tell him I talked to you, and like I said, I didn't even want to get mad about this. I didn't even want to get in the middle of it.
All right. Well.
I don't, he's going to make another video tonight, probably.
Well, I appreciate the call. I appreciate the effort. So,
yeah. Look out, man. Look out.
Can't we just agree, though? And I know some could say this is a little solipsistic, but the movie needed more Hugo, right?
Are you asking me?
Yeah, the movie needed more Hugo. It did, just in terms of to actually create the tension necessary.
Well, see, now you're talking. You started to look. You obviously looked up what solipsism was, and now you're sort of owning it.
Yeah, there you go.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, there you go. Dialectically speaking, it needed more Hugo.
Yeah. All right, man. Good luck.
All right, thanks. Thanks for the call. All right. Well, all right.
You might even say Hugo the health inspector embodies the world spirit.
You might say that.
It's just
deontological ethics are for babies.
Yeah.
What's your sense of duty? Who tells you that? Daddy?
Well, it's for babies. It's libertarianism, right? It's just ultimately, it's just the way that it gets communicated, and I don't care, and I will make this clear. I've said this before. I don't care. I don't care if you can classify my positions in the context of philosophy or not. I don't care. But I am happy if the reason why that Tim refuses to debate, as opposed to like when we had the last debate, and I think it was a little embarrassing for him. I think that was part of the problem. Is because unlike all his other guests, I don't have a deep enough understanding of deontology as it relates to a an ethical worldview.
Yeah, unlike the Hodge twins.
Yeah.
You just don't have the perspicacity, right? That's what it was?
I guess so. And also, the one thing I did find really amusing is that people don't say, like, Tim doesn't seem to understand, and of course he's heard me bitch about Hugo. I mean, it's not like I didn't start a hashtag Where's Hugo 8 years ago complaining about my role on the program.
It's sort of a bit.
That kind of went over his head a little bit.
It may have gone over his head a little bit, and he just assumed that he heard me say it to him personally behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Like, this is an actual grievance.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm very happy with what's happening with Harold, though, on the program.
That's
I gotta
huge.
Say. Harold has been gangbusters.
Is he very Kantian? Sort of?
Well, Harold has far more yes. Harold's read his Ralston, and so he can defend his utilitarianism better. The perception that these people have of the program is completely built upon what their algorithm is in terms of what they look at.
And only seen when we criticize them.
Exactly, which is fine. I mean, I don't watch all of Tim, but I don't make broad proclamation. I have no idea. It's quite possible that Tim has experts on the Supreme Court on his show with the same regularity that we do. Yeah. It's quite possible that Tim has experts on public policy on his show with the regularity that we do. He could have, for all I know, he could be doing a deep dive into the implications of Reconstruction or the implications of I can't even remember what we talked about with Cowie, Professor Cowie, just 2 days ago. I mean,
limits of Keynesianism.
Or he could be. I know he's very much into the working class, and he could be talking to people about austerity as a function of a feature, not a bug of capitalism. He could be doing this. So I don't make any broad proclamations about what his show covers or not. Granted, every time we tune in, maybe it's just he feels more comfortable talking to people like the Hodge twins. I don't know who they are, or like the head of the Proud Boys, or Crowder, or whatever it is, or Kanye, or whatever it is.
Yeah,
that's when we tune in more. So I understand that's a limit that we have. But if Tim really wants to have a conversation about the Supreme Court, I'd be happy to have a conversation about the Supreme Court, about any of it. And he can go on and lie about, like, he's offended how I ruined everything with Crowder, or it was because I wouldn't go in the middle of COVID into his studio. But that's that. But I mean, Tim is, now I just know that next time I'm complaining about what's happening in my my burgeoning voiceover career, I don't go to Tim because he spills the beans. And now, you got Benjamin running around now telling everybody too.
It's a feud.
It's crazy. It's really crazy. Can't believe it. I told him that in confidence.
Who can you trust these days?
Who can you trust is really the point.
I mean, honestly, we should have known that this is the avenue you'd go down, given your deep utilitarian ideology.
I just thought that Tim could help leverage, and then he turns around with this type of thing. Really. A little upsetting.
Also, you've had private conversations with members of the IDW, and you would never really reveal what they sort of told you in confidence on those calls.
That's actually true. I did have a conversation. Who didn't I speak to one of like the Eric Weinstein?
Yep.
Like for like an hour.
Strange guy.
He was a very strange guy. I think he wanted to find out what I was up to. I'm like, dude, everything I've said to you, everything I say on air. I thought I could get him to engage on the show, but he was just scouting me out. All right, final call of the day. Calling from a 630 area code. Who is this? Where are you calling from?
Is this me?
Yes, it is you.
Sam, you son of a gun. This is First Lieutenant Jack from Antifa CENTCOM. I wanted to call in and brief you guys on what's going on in the middle west of America.
Please do.
Well, first I wanted to say the last guy that called in does a really good Bob's Burgers impression.
Yeah. No, he does it. He does an excellent. It's not a hard voice to do. Frankly, there's not a lot of effort that goes into it.
Not as hard as doing Hugo.
Yeah, Hugo is the challenge, but anybody like the Bob's voice is pretty simple.
Well, Hugo's the real star of the show.
Hugo's the real star of the show, but sometimes the light gets so bright that you gotta dim it so that people don't hurt their eyes.
Antifa Commander, you just bought yourself like 5 extra minutes on this call with that flattery.
Yeah, what can you do? Do you want a T-shirt? Can we?
Well, not quite a commander. I'm just lieutenant.
I'm sorry.
Out of the academy.
Apologies.
I wanted to call in because I ammed about this. I didn't think I was going to get through today. But you guys everybody on the show, you guys were all a part of my transition from a moderate Republican to a progressive today. So I want to thank everybody on that. Emma, I think I started watching TYT about the time that you started, and your reporting was phenomenal. If I sound a little shaky, a little nervous.
You're doing great, and hey, that's very nice. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think through watching TYT, one of the recommended things was Michael Brooks, I think, doing some impression, and then I watched a lot of the libertarian debates and learned a lot about how to counter like the conservative people in my life. I grew up pretty Catholic, and like the whole Jesus helping the poor and like the sick always resonated with me. So Medicare for all, school for all, just like seeing those things, you guys helped kind of put a lot of things in perspective. So a huge thank you to you guys.
Thank you for letting us know. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Just keep on keeping on. Left is best. If I have any actual reports from Antifa CENTCOM, I will let you guys know.
All right, appreciate it. Thanks for the
so
call.
much.
All right,
Thank
folks.
you.
That ends the phone call portion of our program. Kowalski. Howdy, I'm a Majority Reporter. Sam, I was wondering if you could explain the Chicago parking meter privatization during the Great Recession. You got some new listeners in the YouTube chat that would like to know about it. And your first interview reminded me of the short-sightedness of some counties and municipalities not serving the community's long-term interests. Emma and Matt, you recently that the subway ride should be free, and I saw a paper recently that subways and bus fares being free could speed up traffic, reduce idling engines, less emissions, and increase local spending. So basically, no downside. Great take, leftist bloggers.
Well, are you the fossil fuel industry? Because there's a downside I see for them.
The was it 2008? I can't remember exactly when it was that Chicago privatized their parking meters. They and what they did is they basically leased the control of the parking meters. They needed cash. They leased the control of the parking meters. I can't remember the details off the top of my head. To basically some holding company. And then they lost the ability to, well, first off, they lost a tremendous amount of revenue long term. Then they also lost the flexibility of like, hey, people want a pedestrian walkway here. Or we need to stop parking here this week. And then they had to pay. Like if they were having a parade or if there was like, they had to pay for lost revenue. It's just this short-sightedness. Instead of like, maybe raising taxes on wealthier people, they basically starve the city of revenue in the future. There was plenty of written about it at the time. You can look it up. It's been a long time. but I definitely did a couple of interviews about it over the years. And it comes up in whenever we talk about privatization. Jerv, Sam told me he was upset. There should have been more guys spitting out steak and Sex in the City. It's true. I like was it Ian? Is that the kid's name?
Yeah.
He said, I came from acting. When I was an actor.
You're an actor first.
It's true. I was an actor first.
I thought you were talking about the Tim Pool guy.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he said I was an actor first.
Oh, gotcha.
I think that guy was probably still in junior high when I was acting. I've been I think he's probably was like. It's possible he could have been in How old is that?
I think he's younger than I am.
This could be, obviously not sure, but it says 31.
Okay.
Maybe?
So yeah, he was in high school when I started doing this 18 years ago. But it wasn't like I had come from that. I mean, I had in college and in high school, I worked in city government in high school. I worked in state government in high school. In college, I went down and worked in a congressional office in college. Then I got into acting. Dual. A real Renaissance person. The Chicago thing was under Rahm Emanuel. I believe it was when he was mayor there. PD Exorcist, thanks for coming on the show. We appreciate your time. Sounds like something a smug liar would say. Sam, explain yourself. JK, just love the show. Been a listener since Air America. You're a lot of things, but liar I wouldn't say is one. Cheers. Somebody that, every now and then I dip into the responses on Twitter. And I responded, somebody said that I was smug and a liar. Or that they were fans. And then she wanted to know if I'd always been this smug. And I was like, I'm pretty sure. Maybe it's just like you see me on video. And I come off more smug on video than I would on... but the lying part I found to be upsetting. Sam from Portland. Sam, all these food examples are making me hungry. AG Dub. I learned this month that Trump's FDA appointee approved thousands of generic drugs that were pulled off the market in 2014. It's still in effect. I found this out after being given a generic that literally doesn't work at all when my insurance dropped coverage of the brand I was taking. I take other generics and didn't think it would be an issue. I just had oral surgery for an abscess that broke through the bone in my sinuses and suddenly felt very mentally unwell and don't know why. There's a writer who focused on this problem with ADD medications, Gina Pera. 2 kids in a trench coat. Republicans fought against paying to replace lead pipes. The primary for the Wisconsin Supreme Court is February 21st. Oh, I thought it was in April. Oh, the primary. Okay. LA accent. He can't go out like this. I'm not sure what that means. Jerry and Lion. I'm happy to hear that Matt's mind is inflicted by the pre-show music track. J-Man Raps. No, I can't believe it's Trump, you knuckle dragger, because it's not true. A lot of these are sort of non sequiturs when you don't get them right in the moment. Thorpedidex, Portland Waste Management Union went on strike last week. Something to keep an eye on.
Good to know.
Portland Waste Management. JR in Philly, if I don't get on, PFAS do break down in the environment. Although the CF bond is the strongest in nature, bacteria are able to break down some PFAS, particularly the shorter chain ones like C2FTS. Well, of course, I knew that, which have been manufactured more recently to replace the longer chain lengths with the PFAS. Arsenic in rice is not from pesticides. It's because inorganic arsenic looks like silica, which plants take up for their defenses and from methylation by bacteria. Did not know that. And there is no safe level of lead in the blood. It's unique in that way. Nice. I'm an environmental toxicologist and would like to call in about lead and arsenic. 415 area code. We'll take that call maybe Friday. We got a great, did you email him? We got a great guest on Friday. Folks, if you have the opportunity to go listen to the Trojan Horse affair, it's one of those serial podcasts, 8 episodes, I think it was. It was really interesting. Do you remember, Matt, when we were talking about the no-go zones in Birmingham, England.
Yeah.
And that was everywhere.
Tim Pool did a little...
he went over there.
Overseas, yeah.
A lot of that came from this thing called the Trojan Horse Affair, and which I had never heard about. And we got the guy who did it, Hamza Saeed. I met him recently, and I listened to the podcast. It was great. He's going to come on.
Trojan, what was it?
Trojan Horse Affair.
Trojan Horse Affair.
Doodles. Trump said that they'd persecute teachers who are supportive of trans kids on the grounds of gender discrimination. See how quick they will weaponize liberal inclusion rhetoric? Yeah, but they're going to weaponize also liberal inclusion, right? They also weaponized communists, socialists, class war. They weaponize everything. Daredevil.
Fight is who gets to determine what these words mean.
Exactly. That's why you don't want to cede that ground. Daredevil. People, especially centrists and liberals, forget that every society has a population of psychopaths and other dangerous, aggressive individuals that exist. Most societies, policing is where they'll be drawn to. In primitive societies, these folks will be the raiders burning down villages. Sam, if there was a trolley rolling uncontrollably down one track towards the world's entire apple supply, well, you could switch it to another track with your future potential for voice work in adult animation. What is the moral imperative?
Oh, that's good.
I try and think of how much I could spur the development of a new, greater apple supply if I had achieved a certain amount of fame through voice work.
You could regenerate.
I would need to know that information before I made that choice. Obviously, as a utilitarian, I need to know which one's going to have the greater impact on the world's apple supply, assuming that we think that apples are a good thing. Mark Monkey, 2 more. Pause it has definitely caught on, Sam. That's true. People say that all the time when they need to pause something. Stuff the pause. Thanks for 2 interviews, sadly revealing about progressives. You are far more comfortable talking to white-collar people than blue-collar. Interesting. I don't know that that's the case. Certainly not in my real life. But
it's good that people are just watching the show to determine things about you as an individual.
Well, it also is like one of the things about blue collar people, although I guess he's saying that the union guy is a white collar person.
I don't know. That's indeterminate to me. I don't know if it's worth even thinking about. But clarify if you want.
I'd be curious about that. Sam from Ottawa, final IM of the day. When people talk about a trans genocide occurring, that caller hit the nail on the head. The Republican Party actively wants trans people to just end themselves because they think they're evil. They don't even try and hide it. Indeed.
Yep.
Just modern witch hunt.
Bradley, Matt, Emma, great job today. Emma will be here tomorrow.
Matt won't be back till next week.
See you next Wednesday.
Whoa.
Look at that.
We're going to have some stories. Matt's going to come back tan, hair down to his waist. Yes. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I guess somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid.